I'm Mike Warlick. I'm the Vice President for Defense at FC International, and we are honored and pleased to host first session at our conference today, showcasing the Coast Guard. And for those that can hear me and are listening, the Coast Guard has a pavilion here at the West for the first time, along with the Marine Corps and the Navy. And that's the heart and soul of the event here, of the three services. We're going to have two 30-minute sessions this morning, and I'll introduce the speakers for each one of the sessions, and each one will have about 20 to 30 minutes. You're going to learn a lot, and I want to talk a little bit about each one of our presenters. Our first presenter today is Captain Tim Borelli, U.S. Coast Guard, who assumed command of Coast Guard Sector San Diego in June 2019. As the sector commander and captain of the Port of San Diego, he's a senior Coast Guard officer in the southwest region of the United States. He is responsible for leading maritime operations to ensure the safety, security, and law enforcement and environmental protection from the U.S.-Mexico maritime border northward to Dana Point, California, and east to the Colorado River and navigable lakes in Arizona and southern areas of Utah and Nevada. I say that because that's a big scope. And how many people in the audience know that? Probably not very many. Captain Borelli's happy to answer any questions if time permits. And what we might do is do a round robin. We can do two sets of questions. And both of our speakers today are willing to take a few questions after we're finished up. So without further ado, let me introduce Captain Borelli.
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Mike, for the kind introduction. First, want to say thank you for being here. I was expecting to just have my Command Master Chief in the audience, only one person, but to see this great audience, I sincerely appreciate it. Also humbled to be up here with my Academy classmate and good friend, Eric Cooper, who will provide some great perspective from his unit. Let me see how the slides work here, and there we go. All right. Little delay on the slides, but I'll get to it. As we mentioned, that the Coast Guard, before I get into, so here's what I'm going to do. Before I get into the more specifically about what's going on here at Sector San Diego, I just want to talk broadly. And specifically about the Coast Guard at large, before getting in and unpacking what we're doing here to protect the Port of San Diego and to save lives along the maritime boundary line. Big picture, the Coast Guard is a unique organization. And I bring this up because we have a unique authorities, specialized capabilities, and these partnerships that are irreplaceable, these domestic and international partnerships. If there's one thing I want you to learn today, it's the unique authorities, specialized capabilities, and domestic and international partnerships that make our organization unique. And so given this slide, right here, you see that up in the upper left-hand corner, the Chinese fishing fleet. The Coast Guard is often the only federal presence in the most remote regions of the world. We operate in every combatant command around the world, addressing sources of maritime disorders, I like to say. Entities to counter, disrupt, or deter illicit activity in the maritime environment. And so the lower left-hand corner is the USS Bonhomme Richard that was ablaze about a year and a half ago. The Coast Guard is there to ensure that the maritime waterways are protected from pollution. In the lower right-hand corner is TACLET, addressing a semi-submersible packed with cocaine on the high seas. And again, everywhere around the world, we exercise our unique authorities, specialized capabilities, and domestic and international partnerships. We are often the only location, the only service to be in these remote locations around the world. So given that broad structure, I want you to think of the Coast Guard as the Maritime's maritime governance force, exercising authorities from all the way from education, cooperation, joint operations, regulatory, to law enforcement and national defense, and everything in between. And that's what I mean by full spectrum maritime governance. We are America's maritime governance force. From educating a teenager on an inland waterway, such as, like, say, on Lake Powell, from a volunteer Coast Guard auxiliarist, to these high-opposed, skilled boardings, high-threat boardings that Eric's team, Coop's team, does on the high seas, and everything in between. And that's what makes the Coast Guard the phenomenal service that, and that unique specialized tool to complement the military might, the firepower of the Department of Defense. So given that whole structure, think of that as I go through for the next 10 minutes of what we're doing here on the Maritime Board. As Mike mentioned, I'm responsible for the maritime safety, security, and environmental protection of from the maritime boundary line with Mexico north to Dana Point, and then 200 miles offshore. And I'm telling you, there is a threat, a persistence threat of illicit activity that's going on from south to north. And you're going to see here that south of the border, there are essentially 3 cartels that are battling it out in the Tijuana region. And they're fighting for territory, but they also are cooperating with one another in terms of illicit activity, smuggling people and drugs and other illicit activity that's happening offshore. So you're going to see that there's 3 main corridors that are for smuggling. In the upper right-hand corner, the conveyances of smuggling are, for example, the panga. It's kind of a Mexican fishing vessel, anywhere from 20 to 40 feet, low freeboard, going at night, difficult to detect, loaded with people. The second is a recreational vessel that is, blends in with common traffic right here in beautiful San Diego, one of the largest recreational boating communities in the United States. And then you have this kind of modified recreational vessel used for smuggling, one-time use. And so what happens is again, whether it's dual load drugs, such as fentanyl, methamphetamines, or heroin, and even cocaine, or people, loaded and smuggled across the United States, fueling the human trafficking that's happening offshore and into the United States, threatening San Diego's neighborhoods. This is what makes the south of the border, the Tijuana region, one of the highest murder per capita in the world, 3 years in the running. And then you have May 2nd of this last year, 2021, a smuggling vessel loaded with 33 people tragically capsized at Cabrillo National Monument. This made international news. And tragically, 3 lives were lost. This is about 200 yards from where I live, there at the point, at Point Loma, at Coast Guard housing. And over 100 first responders, 13 agencies responded to this mass crisis, this event, this mass rescue event. And I want you to realize that every smuggling event that's going on offshore is a safety of life at sea issue. It's about saving lives. It's as much as a safety of life at sea issue than it is a law enforcement issue. These vessels are packed, overloaded, often 1 person per foot of vessel, overloaded, going across unforgiving ocean, darkness and light, expose the elements, and vessels that are not appropriately equipped to handle the weight of these vessels and to the elements. And this is just one example of many that we've had that turns from a law enforcement smuggling operation quickly to a mass rescue exercise. And this is what keeps me awake at night. Sorry about the little delay here on the slides. There we go. Oh. This is a picture that was taken in October. And as I mentioned, these vessels are loaded. This is a panga that was offshore about 90 miles. And this was found by a charter vessel, fishing vessel that was offshore. On his radar, nothing was in that region for upwards of 15 miles, nothing. One of his crew members, this is in the middle of the night, saw a light in that flash, and it turned out to be a cell phone. He illuminated this vessel, and this is one of these vessels that was broken down, adrift, again, 90 miles offshore. And I bring this up because if that charter fishing vessel was not there, these folks potentially would have been lost. And this is, again, it highlights the dangers these folks are taking across the high seas to seek the United States. Finally, this is a picture of one of the most recent smuggling vessels. Again, it could be human trafficking, it could be drug smuggling, again loaded with methamphetamines, heroin, fentanyl, or cocaine. And these backpacks are what's washed up on the beach there at Ocean Beach, to give you an idea of the kinds of activity. There's often dual load. Folks are asked to take a backpack, potentially with drugs as well, to carry across, not knowing the contents of what's in those backpacks. And I just want to kind of frame and conclude that this is a whole of government approach to the problem set. The reality is that the Coast Guard, working alongside our DHS partners of Air Marine Operations, Border Patrol, Homeland Security Investigations, Office of Field Operations from Customs Border Protection, in addition to local law enforcement, San Diego Harbor Police is a key partner in our ability to address this these problems set. So this is a picture that highlights some of the assets that we have working on a day in and day out basis. It's daily that we're faced with. And I bring this up as this is not one of the newest aircraft. This picture, while as a Coast Guard helicopter pilot, a low G maneuver kind of person, got the ride of one of our key partners, the Arizona Air National Guard, which is actually one of our key partners there in Arizona. And they got to ride an F-16, and it was in a 4-ship dogfight. And for some of those Navy pilots that I see potentially here in the audience, I have tremendous respect for those high G pilots, because this picture was taken probably right after we pulled 7 Gs, and I was definitely airsick and filled up a couple bags yes. So I'll leave it at that. But one thing, again, and I'll answer any questions here, but who's visiting from out of town? Raise your hand. Okay. Here in San Diego, there's an iconic lighthouse, and it's the Point Loma Lighthouse, and it's called the New Point Loma Light Station. And it's an exoskeletal structure built in 1890 that has been welcoming home sailors, Marines, coasties, and just mariners out at sea, again, for 130 years. It's an iconic structure. If you've seen the movie Top Gun, you'll know that it's when Maverick and Viper are walking along the Waterway, and they're talking about Maverick's attitude problem. Well, that lighthouse flashes every 15 seconds. Okay? And so for every flash, I just want you to remember that the Coast Guard enables $2.7 million of goods and commodities going through the marine transportation system, every time that flashes. Every 4 flashes, the Coast Guard stops lethal illegal drugs entering the San Diego's neighborhoods, and that includes methamphetamine, meth, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. Also, every 4 flashes, the Coast Guard saves $100 of property otherwise lost at sea. Every 221 flashes, did the math here. I want you to remember this, that the Coast Guard is responding, investigating to a new marine pollution incident. And then every 480 flashes, or every 2 hours, the Coast Guard saves a life. So every time you see a lighthouse, that light flash, lives are saved, drugs are stopped from illegally entering our country, marine pollution incidents keeping our waters clean and safe are addressed, and trade and travel is going through a marine transportation system. The Coast Guard's enabling. So thank you very much, folks, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. How am I looking on time, Mike? 10 minutes, okay. Any questions? Besides Master Chief in the back. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, thank you for the question. So first I'm going to share with you what my greatest challenge is at Sector San Diego. The greatest challenge I have is there is a coastal awareness gap. And it's a term we've coined at Sector San Diego to mean that there is a challenge to fully understand and see that maritime domain, have that awareness of what's going on. Who's going on, what's going on, pollution, vessels, of illicit activity. And so it's not that at Sector San Diego I need more people, I need more helicopters or patrol boats, although that would be awesome. What I need is the ability to use ISR, the ability to use the latest technology to see what's going on offshore, and then be able to optimize the use of my existing helicopters, boats, and people to address that, to see what's going on offshore and be able to fully address it. We've faced a major increase in smuggling. We're at right now, this fiscal year, 100% increase in illicit activity flow than we saw last year. Last year doubled 2020. 2020 doubled 2019. And I'm doing that with the same amount of people, same amount of helicopters, and same amount of small boats and cutters. And so that is my biggest challenge. And in we at Sector San Diego, we get a distinguished visitor. Before COVID, it was every 3 days. We had somebody new. That could be a senator, a congressman. It could be a flag officer rank or industry lead. And the number one mission I tell them, or number one concern I have is that there is a coastal awareness gap. I want to optimize my existing resources better. How can you help me have a better picture of what's going on offshore so I can see those sources of maritime disorder and address it?
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, what are the things that are kind of stopping you or blocking you from getting that information? And I would imagine the challenge, as you mentioned in the example of that panga that was found 90 miles away, that's quite a distance. How do you really have eyes on that? And also, does any DoD components help you in that? Are you able to access those?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. So there are existing sensors that we are able to use to help understand what is going on offshore. DoD is a key partner in this awareness of closing this coastal awareness gap. Third Fleet has been particularly a great partner in how from anywhere from aircraft flying offshore to transiting warships that are just doing training to if you see something, say something. It's as simple as that, and continuing to cultivate that relationship in existing operations to help in that effort. So Third Fleet's been particularly a great partner in that, and so Admiral Kaler has been, and his team, his chief of staff has been fantastic, who I work with on a routine basis. One other kind of note on this, again, closing the coastal awareness gap at sector, what are we doing to be creative? And we've developed a year ago an entity, it's called the SoCal, so the Southern California Maritime Domain Awareness Innovation Cell. And this is an umbrella, essentially, because there's so much technology out there and industry that's out there, what we do is we partner, try to fuse together industry, academia, and other DoD federal partners to use existing technology that's out there and incorporate it into operations that I can control at the sector level. Well, hey, I am not the decision maker when it comes to buying new products, the acquisition side. That's the Coast Guard CG9. That's well above my pay grade. But what I can do at the sector level is see many of these companies, hey, if you want to test out your technology, I have a place where we can incorporate your technology into an existing operation to really determine if it's useful or it's not. Again, it's very clear. I'm not the decision maker, I'm buying stuff, but if you want to test it out, I have a platform for you to do that, working with boats, aircraft, and people to incorporate working with our Border Patrol, working with Air Marine Operations, working with San Diego Harbor Police and our local partners, San Diego Lifeguards. Key partner, just in awareness. And again, that is where I would just like to highlight that. And most recently, back in August, our unit received an award from the National Maritime Intelligence Office for that effort to coalesce tech industry, sensor operators, national defense, industrial complex, and academia into this entity at the local level. So we are trying to make change at the local level that's having national implications, and it's working. Yes, sir. Right? You have a microphone up here. How much time do I have, Mike, before 5 minutes, okay.
Captain, thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
A quick question in regards to your area of responsibility and interaction with USCG Cyber and the MTS. As looking at this on a macro level, the port itself becomes a target of opportunity, of course, and I didn't know how you were related from a sector level to that. Just kind of a little bit of
so
note
thank
of it.
you. Obviously, cyber is a huge vulnerability, but it's also a huge opportunity. I mean, the San Diego port, supports $10 billion annually of trade and travel coming through the marine transportation system. And as we know that cyber is a tremendous can be a vulnerability. Okay, and so the Coast Guard is working to work with the partners, the port partners, to come up with just continued protocol to address these vulnerabilities. And that includes adding more, for big picture-wise, Coast Guard coming up with a cyber rating. Coast Guard building this knowledge and proficiency. Every Coast Guard sector is going to get a cyber MTS expert to help, again, continue to work with our port partners and industry to help reduce those vulnerabilities. And so that's all I'm going to say about it right now, sir. But that is a key concern and opportunity for our service. That is something that we'll be proactive in trying to address. Right, and again, it's any threat to the marine transportation system impacts our economy. is economic security. Economic security is national security. You know that, sir. Thank you very much. Tell you what I'll do is, before I kick it over to my good friend and classmate, I will be also, after his presentation, we can be here to answer any questions offline if you have any. So thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks.
Captain Cooper assumed command in June 2019 of the Maritime Security Response Team West. They call it MSRT, or MSRTW. It's the Coast Guard's West Coast short notice maritime response Counterterrorism Unit, which includes direct action sections, tactical delivery teams, and command of all operational divers across the 3 regional dive lockers in Honolulu, Hawaii, San Diego, and Portsmouth, Virginia. Prior to assuming his current command, Captain Cooper was the Pacific Area Chief of Current Operations, Deployable Special Forces, and Shore Forces, as responsible for all Coast Guard missions from the Rocky Mountains to the waters off the east coast of Africa. So, east coast of Africa, did you realize that the Coast Guard was not just around the continental United States? Maybe we'll hear a little bit about that. Captain Cooper is happy to answer any questions that we talked about earlier after we finish, and we can do a round robin if we have time. Captain Cooper, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. Appreciate that. Thanks for the kind introduction. It's tough to follow my classmate here, Tim Borelli. You know, he didn't really talk about it a lot, but they're out there every day on the water. It's cold. It's dark. You got an adversary who you don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to stop? Are they going to turn around and run? Are they going to try and run you down with their boat? Are they going to shoot at you? It's a tough environment. So he's out there every day trying to keep it safe. But what I'm going to do is shift gears a little bit, get outside a little bit of the San Diego region, and talk about what the Coast Guard does globally. So it's just a quick picture of what my team does, and I'll get into it a little bit. But as Mike mentioned, we have two counterterrorism teams. I have the West Coast team, and I'll talk about it briefly here in the slides. I do want to back up a little bit, though. I want to talk about, because I think this audience doesn't necessarily understand exactly everything the Coast Guard does, sort of what Mike is intimating. So we do have 11 statutory missions, which you see listed there, and we break that into 3 bins of the maritime stewardship, which is making sure we have commerce flowing into the United States, making sure the environment is protected, then moves to a little bit more risky environment of the maritime safety with search and rescue. And then we get into the little bit more dangerous stuff, counter-drug, migrants, counter-terrorism, the maritime security component. And the way the Coast Guard does this is we break it into a Trident of Forces. So what Tim has talked about is the shore-based piece, right? That's the piece here in San Diego that goes out every day, they do their mission, and they come back at the end of the day, whether that's boats or small cutters or helicopters. Then we have our maritime patrol components, and that's our big cutters that are going overseas. They're either down in the Eastern Pacific, they're off Africa, they are in the East China Sea. They're out for long periods of time, what you would typically consider like a Navy deployment, right? So they're doing that, and also our long-range aircraft, which are out there, supporting all sorts of different missions. And then what I'm going to talk about today is the third part of the Trident, which is the Deployable Specialized Forces component. And the difference is, so all the other 2 parts, the shore-based and the maritime, they're very multi-mission. They can do pretty much everything, that you see on the statutory missions there. Some obviously don't have the ICE operations piece, but they pretty much can do everything. The Deployable Specialized Forces are just what they say. We're specialized in a specific component to go after a specific problem. And for example, my team is based here in San Diego, but we're globally deployed to go wherever that threat is, wherever that problem set is, and put specialized expertise and personnel on that to solve that particular problem. All right, so here's an overview of the Deployable Specialized Forces, or DSF units. So like I mentioned, I run the West Coast Counterterrorism Team, the Advanced Interdiction. I definitely, I don't want to talk about it too much, but we have a booth over there. It's on the far side against the wall. We've got a boat. There's all kinds of capabilities that we have. We're able to do chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and high explosive detection. We do that in an offshore environment where we can do some reach back. We can determine the radiological isotopes, determine if that's a threat coming into the United States, push that back to a lab, have them analyze it, and then we can either keep that vessel offshore or bring it in, depending on, we've got dogs over there, I've got boats over there, we've got our assaulters, we have precision marksmen, or that's what the Coast Guard calls our snipers. So we've got all kinds of capabilities to get after what we call short notice maritime response. We're on hook we're on the hook to get out the door in 4 hours to get after a WMD event that's coming into the United States. But I highly encourage you to go over there and talk to the operators over there. They're happy to kind of give you a rundown exactly of what we're doing. We have those 2 teams, one here and one in the National Capital Region. Then we have 10 maritime safety and security teams. So these are put into military and economically strategic ports around the United States post 9/11. And what they do is they're an anti-terrorism component. They create a bubble around a high-value asset. So whether that's the president or a person, or it's a national special security event, which could be like the Super Bowl, or where there's a lot of people, which is it's a high target, they create that bubble on the water so that nobody can get inside and cause some mass destruction. Then we have regional dive lockers, which I'm fortunate to have oversight on. They are in Portsmouth. There's one here in San Diego, and then there's one in Hawaii. So it's tough. I got to go to Hawaii and visit the team, but they're not what you would consider in DoD divers. They do lots of different things, but they do what we call port and waterway security. So they'll go into the water. They'll check for IEDs if we're doing a ship that's coming alongside, or they'll get underneath to inspect what's happening wherever that ship is going. They do a lot of aids to navigation, so the buoys that you see where we can't get in really close with a cutter because it's too dangerous, it's too close to shoal water, we'll put the divers in the water, they'll get under there, they'll change the chain out or they'll change the sinkers out underwater with float bags so that we can continue that commerce that Tim was talking about in and out safely so they're not running aground. They also do cold water ice diving, so we're the experts in cold water ice diving. All our divers do go through Navy schools. They all go, and they're all trained as military divers, so they run through that same program, but we run the cold water ice diving course. In fact, I've got guys up right now in the ice just finishing up for an ice exercise that they were doing up there and some training. And we go down to Antarctica with the polar security cutters and with the icebreakers and up into the Arctic to get underneath in case that ship gets stuck in the ice and you need to put a diver in the water. They got to get underneath it and work on it. So they're very busy on everything that they're doing. Then we have the tactical law enforcement teams. You saw one picture. You'll see the same picture a little bit later on one of my slides. But there's 2 units. There's one here in San Diego. There's one in Miami. They're strictly counter-drug units. They go on Allied vessels. They go on U.S. Navy ships. They go on Coast Guard cutters now. They go down on land base. So they're over there doing all kinds of drug interdiction work. Really also very busy right now, obviously, with what's happening. Most of this is the away game. So what Tim does is the near game, the goal line approach. What we're doing is trying to get after the big shipments of cocaine, the uncut cocaine, before it gets broken into smaller packages and goes over the land. So we can get a lot more drug interdictions on the water in a single seizure if we're down there doing it in that what we call the transit zone. And then we have 8 port security units. These are reserve-only units with a small active duty component, and their whole mission is to support the Department of Defense in a contingency plan. So if we do an invasion or we have to do a defense of a country, as the Marines go in and the Army and everyone else goes in, the port security units come in and hold that port so that we can continue the logistics flow. So they train all the time, obviously. They also do right now the mission in Guantanamo Bay 24/7 to provide port security around Guantanamo for that security component that's down in Cuba. And then we have finally the National Strike Force. There's 3 units. This is the unarmed component of the Deployable Specialized Forces. They were designed after the Exxon Valdez spill, the Oil Pollution Act of 1990. They go after all the environmental pollution sort of things that are in the oil spills, hazardous material spills that are usually in the water. It could be in the rivers in the middle of the country, but they have lots of equipment to kind of go after and protect the environment, including oil containment, checking the chemical components. It's not really my expertise, but they're very busy as well. There. All right, and as Mike mentions, right, so everyone thinks Coast Guard's it's on the coast of the United States. We're actually in 90 countries permanently. We have a presence in 90 different countries. This doesn't represent where those individuals are. This is just a snapshot from a few years ago of where the Coast Guard has been globally deployed, supporting all kinds of operations. So we've been over in Papua New Guinea, working with the Australians, creating security out there for a APEX mission, which all the leaders of the different countries. We've gone through the Straits of Taiwan and done a freedom of navigation operation. We're down in South America, obviously, all the time, both on the land. We're in Africa doing the African Maritime Law Enforcement Partnership Mission. We're in the Arctic. We're in the Antarctic. We're kind of all over the place. And the reason that is the Coast Guard, if you look around the world, right, most navies are more like Coast Guards, right? They're not blue water Navy. They're close in. They do a law enforcement mission like we do. So our training that we work with them is very much in line with what they do. So they want to kind of work with us. We're a little bit less threatening presence as we come over, and we can create great partnerships, kind of like what Admiral Howard was talking about this morning. Great partnerships over there to build that synergy between our countries. So the Coast Guard's a huge force multiplier in that vein. All right, and then here's some pictures of kind of where we've been around the world. So this is the picture in the upper left. That's one of our port security units. That's post-invasion in Iraq. Once we got the gas oil platform out there off Qasr, so we created that bubble around that pretty strategic asset and provided security to ensure that it wasn't a target in the future post-invasion. So they're out there doing that mission. That's what that is in the upper left. In the upper right, you saw that picture. Tim had that in his slide. That's down in June of 2019. It's a counter-drug operation. If you haven't seen the video on this, I highly encourage you to jump on YouTube and check out this video. It's pretty good. This guy jumps off a small boat. He's one of the TACLIP members that's based here in San Diego. Jumps on this semi-submersible, bangs on the top, gets the guy to stop and open. This is a hard problem set for us. So great video if you get a chance to see it. In the middle, what you see is some piracy operations off the Horn of Africa. It's off the USS Gettysburg. So we put advanced interdiction teams on our Navy ships that are out there supporting that anti-piracy mission. We get on board and kind of arrest, prosecute, and go after the pirates that are coming out of Somalia. Not as much as now as it was in the early 2010s, but still are doing that mission. Lower right, what you see is a massive amount of weapons that we seize with another advanced interdiction team. We do have a 24/7 presence off the Horn of Africa, the Coast Guard does, in addition to 6 cutters in the Northern Arabian Gulf. But this is an advanced interdiction team that was on the USS Monterey in May of last year. That's a bunch of assault rifles, machine guns, Russian anti-tank missiles that were going to the Houthis in Yemen. So we seize these fairly regularly. You'll see it. It'll say U.S. Navy seizures, but that's a Coast Guard advanced interdiction team that's doing that mission. And then on the bottom there, that's the port security unit doing some, with our new boats, doing some work in Guantanamo Bay. So we're all over the place doing all kinds of good missions, but let me finish up with this slide here. I like this slide because this is obviously an old picture. This is the Coast Guard cutter Bear. We used to do Bering Sea patrols, which would support the Alaskan natives. And so what Captain Healy did is he went over to, so at the time, the Alaskan natives were starving. They were running out of food because it was a harsh winter. So he went and proposed an idea to Congress, went to Siberia and got some reindeer, brought the reindeer over to Alaska, and just a kind of really a specialized mission. Brought that over to help feed the natives, and also clothe them. It worked so well that by the 1930s we had about 600,000 head of reindeer in Alaska. So a huge success. But what I really want to point out, right, is so everyone knows, I'm sure, that the North Pole is in Alaska, North Pole, Alaska, and Coast Guard brought reindeer into Alaska, and so if you kind of put 2 and 2 together, right, Santa needs reindeer to get gifts around the world. So really, the Coast Guard is responsible for Christmas around the world every year. So, so I just want you to kind of finish on that. So I'm happy to take any questions. All right, that's easy if there's no questions. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me? So when you guys do these forward deployed operational stuff with allies and partners, you know, I retired from the Navy and we were doing stuff with security cooperation. How does the Coast Guard kind of work that? Do you work with like Indo-PACOM, for example, in Papua New Guinea on BPC sort of funding, or do you have other ways of helping them man and equip themselves for these sort of, you know, the ability to kind of guard their sea space and fisheries?
That's a good question, and every country is obviously very different. I'm sure you're probably aware. So sometimes we're working with with Pentagon, who has using their fundings and using some of the SOLIC funding, right, to do some of that, special ops low intensity conflict, to go out and support some of those things. Sometimes it's with the Department of State, like some of our stuff in Taiwan, right, is through the American Institute of Taiwan. Sometimes, like with Papua New Guinea, that was a DoD-led mission, so we were working with Indo-PACOM, and they were funding actually all of it. It was really pretty. I think it was a lot more expensive than they thought it was going to be, but you know, moving a bunch of boats and people over to there is pretty expensive. But so it really kind of depends. Sometimes we have our own funding, right? We have a JADF South mission down in down in the Caribbean in the Eastern Pacific, where we're funded through Congress to do some of that. So it really kind of depends. Money comes from sort of all over to do that. But when we're doing the global stuff, typically it's not coming really kind of out of the Coast Guard budget. We're in support of another, because we have those specialized capabilities. We do boardings every day. That's what we do. You know, that's what the combatant commander wants to do, or the State Department wants to do, the ambassador wants to do during that time frame. So they'll support that. So thank you for the question. Anybody else? All right. Okay.
I've got maybe a couple more questions to throw out there that might be interesting. One of those might be housing for the Coast Guard. How's your housing for the Coast Guard members? And is it near your place of work? Is it on rocks overlooking the sea? But how do you support housing for the Coast Guard?
Do you want to answer that?
I can.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes, I'm standing.
yeah.
I'm standing, so I'll take it. Hey, so thanks, Mike, for the question. So that's another sort of tough question. Housing for us is, we have some very small, you know, pieces of housing that the Coast Guard does own and manage, with the exception of like Kodiak, Alaska. We're the only sort of military entity up there. We have a massive base up there, so lots of great housing up there. The rest of our housing really relies on the backbone of the Department of Defense, right? So we try to piggyback on everything else, and then in the places where there is no housing, they go on the economy, which is really, really challenging. Particularly if you look at like San Francisco area, it's extremely expensive up there, and our individuals are trying to get into housing that's close to work that they can't really afford, so they're going to have to push farther out in a lot of cases. So it really is geographically dependent on where we are as that particular unit. Some places like in Oregon are really hard. There's just not housing there. It's not great housing. We have some of our own, but we just haven't been funded for it, so to keep it going. So that's a sort of a geographic question, but thanks, Mike.
Okay, and I've got another one. I think it's really relevant to the conference overall. But can one of you talk a little bit about the cyber requirements and actions that the Coast Guard has? I have a little bit of knowledge, but I'll try not to share that. But maybe I will. Where does the Coast Guard get training for the cyber missions that you do have? Is the mic working? You can probably speak up there. Okay.
Test. Loud, clear? Okay. Yeah, so the cyber, so I mentioned the cyber, Coast Guard's getting its cyber rating, which is new, and a lot of their training will come through both DoD and continue to build that in-house understanding and knowledge. So in addition to private entity as well. So potentially graduate schools, universities, and it just depends on the level of from officer to enlisted member, what that level of capacity, that training will be. We do have active duty men and women working for U.S. Cybercom contingent, and that is growing as well. In addition to the U.S., the Coast Guard has its own cyber element as well to address a lot of the problem sets associated with it. As far as the impact on the MTS and how that, this is I think a field that is great with opportunity. And as, let's say, the regulatory structure tries to keep pace with the constant challenges of this emerging technology, I don't think sometimes that can even keep pace. So I think as there is no other, I would say, area within the Coast Guard that has that will have as much growth as the cyber field within our service. Would you say? Cool.
Yeah, and I just add obviously it's evolving, so the Academy is working on some cyber stuff, but it's tough to compete with industry, right? Because we don't pay quite what industry pays for people with those skill sets, and so the way we sort of look at it is we defend our network. We require the industry to defend their own networks, right, through regulations that to maintain, and which is what we do with lots of stuff, right? You have to maintain survival of life at sea. We do that through regulations. We do inspections. The same thing happens in the cyber world. You're required to do this, and then we inspect to make sure it's to that level. And then we work with the DoD to, with some of the other backbones of what we're trying to accomplish with some the offensive cyber components. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that response. What's taking place in the U.S. right now is cyber training in general is becoming more centralized, and the different services are being tasked with certain components of cyber training. The U.S. Army, within the last year, was tagged with basic cyber training, and Marines are there now at Fort Gordon where that training takes place, and the Coast Guard ultimately will be there as well. Department of Homeland Security depends on the Coast Guard for the cyber component that was just mentioned a moment ago. So cyber for all of us, whether it's in our own home or whether you're in the government, is really taken an interesting twist. But I want to just wrap it up by saying thanks to both of these gentlemen for being here with us today, and the Coast Guard getting a bit more exposure and that it deserves. And we're going to make sure that happens by beating on the door and making sure that they know this is coming. The Navy has a nice pavilion that many of you will go visit. The Coast Guard is building in that direction. The Marine Corps has been doing that as well. And hopefully next year the Coast Guard will have its own theater where they can present some more technical aspects of it, which might be have a direct impact to industry, but at the same time to help all of us understand what the Coast Guard does, not to mention the Navy and the Marine Corps that's here as well. Thank you for joining. I'd like to wrap up with just a couple of thoughts here. The next keynote panel, which is on the far side behind where you're sitting, is 12 to 1:30. The title is How Did Sea Services Come Out on Resources to Meet the Future? I hope you downloaded the app. Check your show guide that's in that app to keep up with everything going on, because there really is a lot going on. And once again, I want to thank Captain Borelli and Captain Cooper for being with us today and also showcasing the Coast Guard this week. Thank you very much. There you go. We're going to get more questions now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, absolutely, Mike. Thanks for the instructions.